Geek Out! Bleep Plop Loop gamers, and welcome to another installment of the Video Game Archives. I'm Sam.
I'm Zach.
And this week we're talking about the, really I think the only Nintendo DS Super Mario entry that we're going to recount on this, at least right for now on this series, which is to say 2006's New Super Mario Brothers. Which was like one of the best-selling Mario games, if not the best-selling Mario games of all time. And it basically, it's definitely the best-selling game on the DS. It sold close to 31 million copies, which is kind of astonishing if you think about it, really.
This game has some serious legs. Ever since its release, it was just in one of those top sellers. Even if months and months have passed and there have been other highly anticipated titles that were out, New Super Mario Brothers was still selling like hotcakes.
Yeah, and it basically, like, for better or worse, and we can debate about this as, certainly as the series continues, it really influences Nintendo to basically create an entire almost like subline of back to the basics side-scrolling Mario games for like years to come.
Yeah, and this was a breath of fresh air because we haven't had a side-scrolling Mario game in a really long time. So when they came out with the DS and then New Super Mario Brothers, after already having some few hot titles out for it, people were just like ready to jump into the action. So even veteran players and also people who are haven't necessarily played a side-scrolling Mario game and wanted to see what all the fuss is about.
Yeah, it was coming after like years of enhanced remakes of all the classic Mario games, right? Like Super Mario Advance, Super Mario Advance 2.
Exactly.
They did what, like 4 Super Mario Advances or something like that?
I think so.
Yeah. This game is... Yeah. What are some of your like big takeaways when this game first came out, Zach?
Well, it was one thing that I really enjoyed about the game is I would say probably just the graphics for one, because we had a game now where you could play an iteration of Mario that kind of looked like all the promotional renders that were out there of how Mario's like posing in 3D with like his hand up in the air and then like Luigi's running in place. And then we had a game that resembled that art style, and that was really cool. And the other thing too is that with this transition, the controls are just very tight, just like how they were in the old 1980s Mario platformers. So they did not miss a beat going in that direction.
My big takeaway when I think about New Super Mario Brothers is the Mega Mushroom. That's like
it's right on the cover. Took up the entire screen.
Yeah, that was the thing when I think of. There's really two things I think of this game: the new power up, the Mega Mushroom, which they later add to like Mario Kart and stuff. Just the idea of Mario just getting even huge, filling up the entire screen like you were talking about, and just like trampling everything in his path. The other thing is, how freaky was it that Bowser gets burned to a skeleton?
Oh my gosh. I remember when the early reviewers were putting out footage of the first world, and then we were seeing the footage of, it was the old-fashioned, like, oh, hey, get past Bowser, swing the axe, he falls in the lava pit. Only this time, he gets burned, and you see the skeleton just, like, clinging for his life, and that was just unreal.
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, this is like because Mario had gotten pretty family-friendly, if not by Super Mario. I mean, it was really always, but like they kind of start really playing that up by, I want to say, like Super Mario Sunshine, if not earlier. This idea of kind of like even more kind of cutesy Mario with that redesign, and suddenly you're playing a game where one of the most recognizable bad guys in all of video game history, if not the most recognizable bad guy, is charred to a skeleton by actions that you do directly.
Yeah, that was it's very interesting, like how you mentioned the story in this instance, because it kind of reminds me of just these old timey cartoons where all they had was just the music and then the gestures that they made, and just little oohs and ahs and ha ha ha's here and there. So when you have Bowser Jr. was the real star of this, with being the villain and kidnapping Peach, and just yeah, there's like these cutesy little shorts in between worlds where Bowser Jr. is like ha ha ha, and then Mario's like oh no, and it did have like this delightful Nintendo charm that you would expect.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely a little more of a sardonic edge to it. Kind of. Yeah, no. I mean, it was just. Not to mention, how hard is like Nintendo pushing Bowser Jr. at this point? Because they had just done it with Super Mario Sunshine too.
Well, Super Mario Sunshine was the big debut. Before we had Baby Bowser, which I guess got swapped out with Bowser Jr. at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, now we have, hey, boom, Bowser Jr. in your face. No longer in a sports game. He's here as a villain, and Bowser kind of takes a backstage to this, and it's just, yeah, he's just like the bigger, badder boss at the end.
Yeah, and he's cool, and he's more badass because now he's a skeleton.
Exactly. Yeah, we have the debut of Dry Bowser.
Yeah, which would also subsequently go on to be in Mario Karts and other, really just Mario Karts. Now that I kind of think about it, but yeah, what would you say are some of your absolute favorite things in New Super Mario Bros?
Some things that I thought were cool right off the bat is some of the power-ups that just, well, not necessarily power-ups, but the new mechanics that just translated so well into the 2D Mario platformer. So, for instance, we have him ground pounding, we have him wall jumping, and those were very nice additions. There weren't stages necessarily that focused on them, but they were things that you could do. Oh, and the triple jump. Yeah, triple jump fit in perfectly. It was great for anyone who wanted to speed run the stages. Some other things I enjoyed were, even though this wasn't primarily focused on the DS functionality with the dual screens and then the bottom touch screen, one thing that I thought was cool was that when you went into a pipe, Mario went to the bottom screen, and then your prime focus is on that, and then you had like the map info at the top instead.
Yeah, that kind of, the more intuitive kind of display and everything. What would you say? How would you rank this game compared to the rest of the? Because this for me is one of the best games on the DS, easily. I mean, there's a reason why it's such a top seller. And how would you compare it? Because again, it basically creates a subgenre of Mario games, right? You see it starts here. You get New Super Mario Bros. Wii, New Super Mario Brothers, New Super Mario Bros. 2 or 3DS or whatever they call it, New Super Mario Brothers U. How do you think this stacks up to the rest of this kind of like sub brand that Nintendo's inadvertently created?
Yeah, so sure. So as far as introducing a new line within the Mario franchise, this particular title it's definitely like the cream of the crop as far as Mario titles go. If you need an example of a good pick up and play, a 2D Mario platformer, and that's the other thing too about this title, is that some of the much older titles might be too hard for a younger generation. And we're getting to the point now where gaming has a much wider audience than it originally had back in the late 80s and early 90s. So if you have a kid that you want to entertain, or if you're a seasoned gamer who maybe doesn't necessarily have those video game reflexes, this was a really good entry-level title for you to play. And anyone could just get to the later worlds and then be Bowser and then see the credits and be able to share those experiences with others. So I would definitely rank this very high up there. Some additional features I enjoyed about this title was the multiplayer functionality, for instance. So it was subtle, but it was nice. So it took advantage of the wireless play with so if someone who didn't necessarily have a copy of New Super Mario Brothers, they could take advantage of the DS download play feature, and if they were within a wireless range, then you had these battles that you could do. For instance, Mario and Luigi could be duking it out on the same map, either to collect the most coins or to just like try to KO the other person. So one person get the Mega Mushroom, and the other person could be on the run, or one person could be getting the blue shell power up, and then the other person's on the run, or one person's getting the mini mushroom, and then finding like the really teeny tiny pipe to hide. And then they also took some of the mini games, the touchscreen mini games that were brought over from Super Mario 64 DS, and being able to go head to head with other players in those were a lot of fun.
Yeah.
My particular favorite out of the DS mini games, the touchscreen mini games, was when you're touching the bomb and you're just having the bomb, and then you're having it avoid all the fires.
Oh yeah. And I feel like some of those. I mean, that kind of, you were mentioning the kind of battle-oriented or competitive multiplayer. I feel like that kind of directly influences all the subsequent games in this kind of sub-series, right? Because they all become like, arguably, you could argue they're cooperative, or you could argue that they're competitive. I've seen it kind of unfold both ways whenever I played New Super Mario Bros. U or New Super Mario Bros. Wii. But I think that's definitely something that kind of branched off from the multiplayer mode in the original version.
Yeah, it is absolute chaos once we ever get to those titles. But yeah, I absolutely love this game. One of my gripes was having the hidden worlds where you needed the mini mushroom in order to access them. So, for instance, the boss battles, you would have to repeat, I believe it was like worlds 2 and 4 that you had to repeat again. I could be wrong. So otherwise, if you're progressing through the game, you're only going through 6 worlds, but then you would have to go back for the other 2 worlds that are hidden, because you had to beat those same worlds again with the mini mushroom power-up. And this was really hard because fighting the boss, it was one hit and you were gone, and also you could only hurt the boss by ground pounding.
Yeah, I mean, and there's little kind of secrets. Also, the physics in this game was something that I wasn't quite. They took advantage, obviously, of the technological advancements that had come. What's the last side-scrolling Mario game at this point? It'd be like Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins from like 92. So
yeah.
It had been like 14 years, and so they're like, yeah, we can kind of play around with the physics a bit. Maybe Mario can slide on walls. Maybe, yeah, he can do the ground pound, all these cool tricks that he's learned in 3D. He still knows them in 2D. But some of it, since you're not necessarily accustomed to quite yet in a 2D, that was, I mean, at this point, this game's been out for 12 years now, so I know what I'm doing. But I remember being thrown off by that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's it either comes naturally to you, or it takes a little bit of a learning curve, but then you immediately get thrown right into it, and it's totally fine.
Yeah.
One thing that I absolutely enjoyed is the blue shell power-up. I know some people think it's just like absolute chaos when you ricochet off everything, but I thought it added a whole new layer of fun to it, where you can see how many enemies you can mow down, and then be able to time your jumps in order to keep moving forward and hopefully not ricocheting backwards or into a pit.
Right.
That was just another extra thing I wanted to throw in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just, like you're saying, it's just a top-down solid, like, it proves that, like, the classic formula, what Nintendo had developed, like, 20 years prior, was still just as viable. It just needed a fresh coat of paint,
Exactly.
And that's what I think all of these, and I'm sure we'll cover it with different varying degrees, because if I do have a gripe, and this isn't New Super Mario Bros. Fault at all, is that Nintendo maybe adheres a little too comfortably with this formula, because after like New Super Mario Bros. Wii, the formula becomes pretty apparent. It's like, oh, it's another one. Like, it's a solid gameplay experience, but it's not necessarily new. But with New Super Mario Bros. Being the first game in this kind of subgenre, it was like, oh my god, this is a lot of fun. It really is kind of like a return to form,
Yeah, this series unfortunately got burned by the last 2 titles, just kind of playing it safe, being the same art style, just another iteration without really evolving the series dramatically. And because of that, New Super Mario Brothers for the DS, it kind of takes a hit from it, which is really unfortunate because, again, this is a solid, timeless classic.
Yeah. So any other Any other last thoughts on New Super Mario Bros. Zach before we put this one to bed?
Yeah, I would just say that New Super Mario Brothers for the DS. If you can find a copy, by all means, play it. It's wonderful. And if there's someone out there who hasn't played a Mario game, go ahead and put this in their hands.
Yeah. Well, there you heard it here first, folks. New Super Mario Bros. Solid return to form for Nintendo to its flagship franchise. I've got it on the Wii U. It's fantastic. And this has been another installment of the Video Game Archives. I'm Sam.
I'm Zach.
Keep playing. This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, we've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual catching up show every Wednesday. And you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.